ਫੈਡਰਲ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ ਕਾਕਸ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦਿਆਂ ਲੀਡਰ ਐਰੀਨੋ ਟੂਲ ਨੇ ਹਾਰ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਾਰਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਘੋਖ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਵੇਗੀ। ਓਟੁਲ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਕੰਪੇਨ ਦਾ ਰਿਵਿਊ ਐਮਪੀਸ ਜੇਮਸ ਦੀ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ।
Following the election, I announced that our Conservative team will be doing a thorough review process and took immediate action to get the ball rolling the day after the election. As I said today during our first meeting as a caucus, as leader, I am accountable. Accountable for what went well and accountable for where we fell short. I'm also accountable for where we failed in executing on our plan for Canadians. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I'm resolutely committed to reviewing every element of our campaign. And my family and I are resolutely committed to the next chapter in our party's fight for this great country. As a united team, we need to refocus and redouble our efforts to reach out to more Canadians. And a big part of that will happen through lessons learned from our review. Today, I'm very pleased to share that my colleague and former Member of Parliament, James Cumming, has agreed to chair the election campaign review. With the support of our caucus and the Conservative Party, James will conduct a thorough review of the national campaign. I'm very pleased that James has agreed to chair the review, and I look forward to his report, which will ideally be concluded by the end of this year. Our team is also focused on what comes next. We have a busy session ahead in the House of Commons. And if we take Justin Trudeau at his word, we may be back to the polls in the next 18 months. We know that too many Canadians are worried about what their financial future looks like, worried about their job, worried about the fourth wave of the pandemic, and worried about the rising cost of living. Canada's Conservatives will continue to focus on how we bring people together to make life more affordable for everyone and to bring this country together. This means ensuring people who are struggling the most get the supports they need. Canadians who've been left behind by the Trudeau Liberals know they have a voice in Ottawa with Canada's Conservatives. Ensuring that businesses who are unsure about the next few months look like they can have confidence in our future. And that Canadians who are worried about endless spending and debt know that we will continue to hold the Trudeau Liberals to account.
ਪੂਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਰ ਮੁਲਕ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਉੱਤੇ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਗਰਿਕ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਟ ਹੋਣ। ਜੇਕਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਟੀਕਾਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਮੁਹਿੰਮ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ੋਰਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਹਜੇ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਅਜਿਹੇ ਹਨ ਜੋ ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਲਗਵਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਹੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਈ ਖਿਡਾਰੀ ਵੀ ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਗਵਾ ਰਹੇ। ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਡੋਨੋਵਾਨ ਬੈਨੇਟ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੱਖ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਹੈ।
It's a massive issue, not just for the NBA. I think culturally it's a big issue. There's been a huge surge in Facebook and Google searches on how to get a religious exemption since Andrew Wiggins asked for one. And I think that highlights the issue. We're in an infodemic. These NBA players certainly are influencers in many ways, in fashion and culture. I would hate for them to be influencers on where we get our information, because it seems like a lot of them are going to YouTube University on how to figure out whether or not this vaccine is real, and clearly it is, and it's working. And I'm not sure where they're doing the research. I'm not seeing them post on IG, them with Bunsen burners or syringes trying to figure out if the vaccine works. I don't really have an issue if NBA players or anyone don't want to be vaccinated. That's their choice. I have an issue if they want to live the same life as me and everyone else who's going to arena and working in that arena and in society to make sure that society works. If they don't want to be vaccinated, if you don't want to be, you can stay home. That's your right. And this is the real thing. Why would they not stay home? You touched on it. The money in the WNBA, a very similar league to the NBA, both culturally and philosophically. 99% of their players are vaccinated. Of the 144, all but one, and there's a real understanding that it will be 100% by the start of their season. What's the difference? Andrew Wiggins and Kyrie Irving and Bradley Beal, the outspoken players in the NBA, they make over $30 million a year. That's more than the entire salary of the WNBA. So this is not about Moderna. At the end of the day, for many, this is about money. And when you say we're going to take your money, then people start to have a different conversation. But it's a privilege for them to think that they could have the same life as me or you and not have to assimilate to making sure we have all our public health measures in check.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੌਂਗ ਟਰਮ ਕੇਅਰ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਅਕਸਰ ਗਰਮਾਇਆ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਿਹਤ ਸਹੂਲਤਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਧਾਰ ਨਾ ਮਾਤਰ ਹੈ। ਇੱਥੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਕਿ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਖਾਸ ਰਿਹਾ। ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰੇ ਲਈ ਨੈਟਲੀ ਮਹਿਰਾ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਿਹਤ ਗੱਠਜੋੜ ਦੀ ਕਾਰਜਕਾਰੀ ਨਿਰਦੇਸ਼ਕ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ।
Oh, yes. I mean, it sounds good, but we've heard the same promises over and over and over again. So, I mean, words are cheap at this point. This is the fourth time, literally at least the fourth time, that they've announced tens of thousands of new staff for long-term care. But that staff, those PSWs, have never materialized. The care levels are the lowest that they've ever been in my 25 years of experience, and they have not improved. People don't get basic care, you know, the baths, the showers, the feeding, you know, the foot care, turning them so they don't get bed sores. That kind of basic care can't happen without enough staff. And the government is adamantly refusing to fast track the increases in staffing and the care levels in long-term care, even despite the fact that it was the priority recommendation of the Long-Term Care Commission, and it is the priority recommendation of all the families and the advocates and anyone who has any expertise in long-term care. So to hear that re-announcement again, it's annoying, it's infuriating, because nothing has happened. It's a lot of propaganda, but no real substance. And then Doug Ford said that they would start holding long-term care operators accountable for the terrible negligence that we've seen in their homes. And we're like, start holding them accountable? They promised an iron ring. They promised no stone would be left unturned, that they would actually hold them accountable after the first military reports a year ago, May, and nothing has happened. In fact, quite the opposite. They passed legislation to shield them from lawsuits for negligence, and not one home has been fined, not one operator, not even the very worst. None have lost their licenses. There has been no justice for the 4,000 families of those who died from COVID alone, let alone the families of those who starved to death. I can't even believe I'm saying this.
ਮਿਸ਼ੀਗਨ ਅਤੇ ਐਨਬਰਿਜ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਲਾਈਨ ਪਾਉਣ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਵਾਦ ਕਾਫੀ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਵਿਵਾਦ ਕਾਫੀ ਦਹਾਕੇ ਬੀਤ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵੀ ਹੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ। ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਹੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ਾਂ ਤੇਜ਼ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਹਾਈ ਕਮਿਸ਼ਨਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਨਿਭਾ ਰਹੀ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟਨ ਹਿਲਮੈਨ ਨੇ ਤਾਜ਼ਾ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ।
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is that, you know, the U.S. government, like the Canadian government, has been hoping and has been encouraging Enbridge and the state of Michigan to try to resolve this issue between themselves. It is a dispute between Michigan and Enbridge, and we really were working hard to support them in doing that, as was the U.S. government. They had mediation, court ordered mediation, and we were having discussions with the U.S. government. Unfortunately, you know, neither of those processes have led to a solution to date. And so we don't take this lightly, but we have to use all the tools in our toolbox to try to ensure that this essential piece of infrastructure continues to operate. So the way the treaty is set out, the first thing that we do is we seek a negotiation under the treaty. And this is a legal binding treaty between our two countries. And so I have every expectation that the U.S. State Department will sit down with our Global Affairs Department officials and discuss this treaty and negotiate it. As I said, we have been in discussions with the U.S. administration for over 8 months, quietly, behind the scenes, trying to see if we can support the parties in coming to a solution. And Enbridge has had, has put some ideas on the table to try and address some of the governor's concern. They are working hard to advance the tunnel project, which is a project that will make this safe pipeline even safer. You know, Governor Whitmer has at times said that she doesn't oppose necessarily the building of the tunnel, which was started under her predecessor. So I think that what's important here is that we have a robust conversation to really see if there are avenues to resolve the problem, because just keeping it in the courts for however long that takes isn't going to be a solution either in the long term to making sure that this energy gets back into Canada from Western Canada.
ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਨੂੰ ਬੇਸ਼ੱਕ ਕਈ ਲੋਕ ਗੰਭੀਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈ ਰਹੇ, ਪਰ ਇਸ ਮਹਾਮਾਰੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਿਆਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਗਵਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਿਸਕੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਹਲੂਣ ਕੇ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਅਲਬਰਟਾ ਦੇ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮਰੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਦੁੱਖ ਭਰਿਆ ਤਜਰਬਾ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
Hi, I'm Bridget Johansson. I live Red Deer County, Alberta. I'm 34 weeks pregnant and I'm recovering from COVID-19. Feel like you've been hit by a bus. You just don't know what's to come next and if you're going to make it out on the other side. So I wanted to wait before I got vaccinated. So if something did go sideways, you know, baby would have a better chance of survival. So it wasn't I guess top priority when it should have been. When I went to the Olds Hospital the first time, there was an obstetrician on actually. She, you know, assessed me, said, I want you to go get a pulse oximeter monitor. I want you to start monitoring your oxygen level. If it drops, you know, below 94, I want you back in here. Within a day and a half, my family doctor had called. She said, I want you to hang up the phone, call 911, and get assessed. So that's what we did. I was in an ambulance and on my way to the Foothills Hospital that afternoon. So when I got unloaded out of the ambulance and they wheel everybody on their stretchers down into triage, there was stretchers of people. Stretchers. I just literally started crying and I said to the ambulance attendant, I looked at him and said, am I going to make it out of here alive? You know how to hold your crayon. After 2 days or 3 days, I was stable on room air above 92, 94. So they discharged me. My chest just felt